I'm back to work on this teal colored piece and add some more texture in some different ways that you might want to try on your piece. You can see I have stitched down the couching a bit more. I added a little bit more feather stitch, some bullion knots, some French knots, and I'll keep adding some of those, but I think it's time to use some of this old thread. And I say old thread because when I pull it, it breaks pretty easily. As it's getting further in the spool, it doesn't break quite as easily, but I don't trust it. So yeah, see, that came off really easy. So I'm just grabbing some chunks of it. And then I found another one that was also doing the same thing, and I don't want to put quite as much, but in a few places I might want to do some of this. And I grabbed some beads. Yeah, see, look at how quickly that's, all I'm doing is unwinding it and it's starting to rip. You don't want to stitch with thread like that. If you're buying thread at the thrift store, make sure you do that pull test to make sure that it's still something that you can use. And I'm just gonna kind of gather it together like that. And for once I actually have a needle threaded. Can you believe it? And I just want to add a little something. I got some beads here. Maybe we'll use, and I doubled my thread. Oh, this one's not going to want to go through there. Okay, picky beads. I'll grab another one. I think these will go through there. Yeah. I did a double thread so that then I can just, I've got a loop. It makes it a little bit easier to knot like that. So I just have a bead just sort of nestled in the threads, and that's all I'm going for. I'm just going to add it over here by this little sari ribbon, I think. And you can make your collection of threads as loose or as tight as you want. My idea is just to get some more texture in there, so when you run your hands across the threads, you're going to feel the texture. So I'm just going to come back through here a few times. So I still got my bead here, but it's not like front and center, and that's kind of what I wanted. I've also got, these are called wool slubs, and I get them from Cupid Farms. And they're just these little tiny bits of wool, and they've been dyed some fabulous colors, and they're kind of nice to add in there. You can just run your needle right through them. That's just another little bit of texture, and that's all I need. I'm going to come over here is kind of a bare spot. I'm going to take my darker thread, and we got, I don't know, my needle might not go through this one, but we'll try it. Yeah, I'm going to need my beading needle for that. That's fine. That's fine. I'm just going to kind of gather some of the threads. They're going to come undone as I continue to work on the piece, and I'm going to be okay with that because it's going to make it look a lot more organic. Now you could add some fabric behind there if you wanted to, make it like a little cluster of layers of fabric and threads, but I just kind of wanted to see, oh, I like that. I like the light bead in amongst those dark threads. And because I've got a light thread on my needle now, that's going to give yet another look if I want it to. I think I'm just going to make a little bit of a nest, kind of like a running stitch through all the threads, and just sort of gather them up just to make it a little more sure that most of it's going to stay down. And again, as I work on the piece, now I can come back in here. Let's get this part down and I'll show you what I mean. You can go in there and you can cut your threads, or maybe you want to come in with a different color thread and just make a really loose French knot. I'm just going to make a whole bunch of wraps so I know it's not going to be precise. And I've got a long tail here, and I've got just a nice kind of knotted loop. If I wanted to add some more of those same color beads, I could do that too. I think I'm okay with it just like that. Maybe we'll put a little bit of the wool slub over there. Okay, and the fact that it didn't pull through all the way, I'm going to let it stay like that so I get that little bit of a loop. So see, I've just got some more texture. And some of it, you know, if you come in with your scissors, you could cut the loops, come in and maybe do some bullion knots that go over it. So I'm going to go do a little bit more of that. Yeah, I like that. And I'm just going to come over and catch a few more of those edges. It makes it just like almost like a little nest. That's a little too perfect for me. So I'm just going to pull it apart. Pull it apart, not a big deal. Now that I pulled it apart, I can sort of tuck it down. Right about there. Alright, some more of this. Let's put the dark. We got another blank spot over here. That would be a good place to fill. I'm pretty sure I'm going to pull this together as a vessel. I'm going to let those little white ones just kind of hang out. Don't get hung up on making sure you catch everything. You just catch what you can. And as you're working on the piece, as you're continuing on the piece, you can always go back in and tack it down. Now, if it makes you feel better, go ahead and grab your Fabri-Tac or some other glue of your choice, and you can certainly add a little bit of extra insurance that way. But I'm not going to worry about it. I need to get some more of this feather trim on there too. My desk is a disaster, so I can't find all the things I was working on with before, but it's okay. All right, again, this is a little too perfect of a nest for me. It looks a little too circular, so I'm going to stretch it this way. It's going to come up, and I'm just going to pull some of those over a bit. Doesn't have to be many, just enough to get rid of that perfect feeling to it. And that might be a good place for a little bit of wool slub. That's too big. I want a little one. There we go. Kind of spirit like a shish kebab skewer. Okay, and I do want to use some of these other beads. So let's, okay, so I'm just going to do, maybe with this slub, I'm going to come up and add one of these beads. I'm not trying to follow a pattern because that's just not the way my brain works. Not often. I guess sometimes it does, but not often. Because that's a heavy bead, I am going to come up through here a second time. And then I'm going to see if we like one of these other ones. Just all about adding a little bit more visual interest. Okay, I went and found these beads, which I think will be a good accent. Just a little touch of something else. We'll put a few on here. And I just kind of want to put this first line through kind of loose so then I can spread them around. Sometimes this works for me. Sometimes it's just easier for me, less time consuming if I do them one by one. I keep trying them this way and for some reason they frustrate me, but you know, you try. You keep trying the new things and see if you can make it work the way, in my case, it's like, is it going to work the way it is in my head? Most of the time, no. All right, what I don't like about that, I can tell you already, is seeing that thread. So we're just going to come back up here. It's just going to be a cluster of beads. Nothing wrong with that. We're just going to go one at a time. You have to give yourself time to experiment with different ways of doing things. you watch a video and you say, okay, somebody did it like this, I'm going to do it like they did it. And you're sure that that's the way it's going to work out for you. And sometimes it does. And sometimes you just take a complete left turn. And what you have to learn how to do, okay, what I say what you, but you know, it's all about me having to learn these things, and then I share them with you because I figure there's probably somebody else that has the same sort of thinking that I do. I have to learn to let it go, and I realize, okay, just because so-and-so did it that way, it doesn't mean that's the way that it's going to work for me. And that's okay. You know, you could tell me you want to go from point A to point Z, and some people are going to go boom, 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 A, B, C, D, E, and that's the way they're going to get there. And other people are going to go from A to D, they're going to go back to B, they're going to circle around. As long as you get where you want to go, and maybe you're going to end up someplace else that you didn't even know was going to be better than the first place you were heading. That's what it usually is for me on a project. Is I start off in one direction thinking, okay, I want to make this thing and it's going to look like this. And when I get to the end, it doesn't look anything like my initial plan, but usually I like it better. All right, I just want to balance a little bit with some sparkle up here. I think that is what this thing needs, is it needs some sparkle. And I'm just going to keep doing it my old-fashioned way. Okay, and see, it tucks itself down in there in the threads, and that's okay, because when this is done, you're going to hold this slightly different angles, and you're going to see something different each time you do it. This might even need more of the sparkle than it does of the blue beads. You don't have to add beads to your project, but I am a new bead lover. Come up just a couple more, just to kind of, I want some balance. That's basically what I'm looking for, is a little bit of balance. All right, and then I want to straighten out this one big bead, because right now you see the side where the hole goes in, you don't see as much of the blue, and I want to see the blue. So if I come back through it a second time, I should be able to tuck it the way I want it. Yeah, there we go. And see, then you can just kind of come along next to your French knots and say, okay, I want to add just a little sparkle there. I like beads in amongst the knots. I think they add a lot of visual interest. You know, so I've got my French knots here. I can come over here and put a bead. I can come over here to where I have that little, what do you call it, fun fur? And I can add a bead in the middle of that. And while we got thread on the needle, we're just gonna, maybe we're gonna add, we're just gonna add another one of these. I don't think it needs as many of the blue beads as it does this. I like it when I can think about the sun gonna hit things a certain way. Let's put, oh no, I'm getting too much in line there. That starts to bug me if I look like I'm going to go in a line. So this one's a slightly different shape. If we go up. If I have a heavy bead, I do like to go through them a couple times. Just because I've got a little bit of thread left, I'm just going to add a little sparkle right there at the end. Ah! Alright, and my needle came unthreaded. But I just need to pull it through to make a knot, so I don't need to put it back on a beading needle, which is always the harder one to thread. It just takes me more time, so I just need to have it big enough that I can go through the other side and knot it off. This happens to me so many times where I just forget to leave enough thread to be able to tie it off. Oh yeah, a little bit of sparkle is nice. Okay, let's just take a little bit of this fun fur. We don't need very much, but I'd like to add a little bit more of it. Again, it's about balance. It's not about making everything like in a perfect pattern. I just want it to feel balanced, even though this is going to be sewn into a vessel. I'm just going to kind of bring it over here. And what I'm doing with this, because these bullion knots are really dark, and I decided I didn't want to do a lot more of the dark ones, this is going to add another dark area, darkish area, so it kind of, again, it balances things. And I could certainly, whoops, grab my thread that wants to break. Make my little pile, and I could add that in there too. with perhaps a bead, and then I'll come back over with some sparkle when I rethread a beading needle. No, that's a slightly different style bead, and that one's not going to go through. Let's find one that will go through. Ooh, I don't like that shade of blue with it. Nope, we're going to take that one right back off again. There we go. Only took a couple tries. And we're just going to have that bead help us hold down those threads. And I might come back in here and do some French knots just a little bit. All right, I like that darker there, so I might do the same thing over here. Add a little bit more dark here, here, and up here. Even though I'm past my, ugly duckling phase, nothing here has to be set in stone. There's no reason to stress out about this kind of stuff, like the fact that I didn't want to even get that thread all the way through. It's not a big deal. I know, I'm a broken record, right, because I'm saying that all the time, but you should know I'm saying it for myself as much as for anybody that's watching, because I need to remind myself, okay, so what is the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that can happen is that you end up cutting some things out. I had a whole bunch of really white thread in here. I didn't like it. It was just a little too bright, so I cut it out. You could decide, you could come in here and decide that you only want to use this part, this little bit right here of the piece on something else, and cut it apart. Yes, some unraveling will happen, but not all. Or you could do some heat and bond on the back of it first, and then it would hold it together while you did whatever else you were going to do with it. And boom, that's enough. So I'm going to come in and fill in these last few little bits, and then when I come back, we're going to be ready to put this together, I think, into a vessel. I'm pretty sure that's what this is going to be.